time for another Automation Monday. And yeah, I'm outside. It's so nice. It might be a little noisier, but honestly, I don't care. This week I've got a doozy for you. I promised it a few weeks back when I showed you my macro for setting up alt mixes in a completed song. So it takes a copy of the full song and makes however many copies of it you need, just one after the other in the same Logic project, and names each one with a marker for the type of alternative mix it is. For example, no drums or bass and drums only, something like that. This week, I'm showing you the bounce macro that takes each one of those and bounces it out using whatever song title I give it, and then suffixing that with the name of the marker. So, in other words, it's going to come out my great song full, my great song no drums, my great song, etc. We're going to take a look at how that works and show you how it's all put together. A few weeks ago, I showed you my macro for preparing alternative mixes, basically copying out a finished song to, in this case, 5 or 6 alternative mixes. And all it does is copy the whole thing, but then the structure is already set up for me to go through here and make the edits that I need to make, check the transitions, and ultimately bounce it out. Well, the bouncing out part is what we're going to look at today. I have a macro that will look at these markers and use them as the suffix to the song name and bounce out each section here as its own alternative mix. So it assumes that the project is set up using the macro I showed you a few weeks ago. So let's take a look at how it works. I choose bounce alts. The first thing that happens is it prompts me to make sure that the project is set up the way we need it to set up. Each alt starts at a marker named for that alt, and you see here that's the case. Full mix, no drums mix, no drums, no bass, drums and bass, drum percussion, and so on. Each alt except the last one ends at a marker named out. You see that that's the case here. Except for the last one. The final alt end marker is named end, and you see that one down here, okay? And once I've confirmed that that's all the case, I set the cycle bar using the first alt's marker and then click OK in this window. So in Logic, you can drag a marker upward to set the cycle bar to the length of that marker and enable it. Now I just click OK. It prompts me to fill in a song name that's going to precede the alt name. So say this is my amazing joint underscore, and now all the alts are going to start with this phrase. It copies the first marker name, which is the word full, and then it prompts me to set the bounce parameters, so the file format and resolution, so on and so forth. And once I've done that, it says click OK here. Now, you only need to do this once. It's telling me just set this up once and all the succeeding alts are going to be bounced with exactly the same parameters. When you've got it set up the way you want, click OK here. And now it brings up the Save As dialog box, and you see that it filled it in, the name of the song underscore the name of the alt. So that's awesome. Now it tells me choose the desired location for the bounces, and you only need to do this once and all the alts are going to end up there. So I'll come over here and I'll actually create a marker, my amazing joint, all the alts and the full. Create a folder. So I'm there and it says when you're finished, click OK here. So I'm going to do that. And off we go. It bounces the first one. It tabs a couple times, grabs the name of the next one. It uses the same parameters. It fills in the name and it hits bounce. And it's going to do that for all the rest of them. Now when it comes to the last one, it advances to that marker, copies the marker name, and because it's end, it stops. Let's take a look at how that worked. All right, here we go. So it looks kind of gnarly, but it's actually fairly straightforward. So here's the setup. We hit return to rewind to the start of the project. We deselect all to make sure there's nothing selected because that would affect the bounce region. I have a local variable called alt name, and that's going to be used to store the name of the current alternative mix. And I basically just reset it to empty to start off the macro. I reset the default pause length, and then here is that box that came up, the window that came up reminding me to set up the project the way it needs to be set up for this to work correctly. It's got an OK button and a cancel button that will cancel the macro, and then ask me for the song title or anything else that I'd like to use to preface the name of every alt mix. And then it'll save whatever I type in to this local variable to prepend it to the name of the alternative mix. All right, so once all that setup is done, we come down here. And the whole thing is grouped in what is called a while loop. And all that means is while such and such is true, keep doing all the stuff in this list of actions. And what we've said is as long as the current alternative name isn't end, and remember that's that final marker in the project, so as long as we're not on this last marker, keep going. That's all it is. Then I use a key command to select the marker. I pause for a moment. I copy the marker name. I pause for a moment. I hit escape to get out of editing mode on that marker name. I store the marker name in a local variable called alt name. Pause for a moment. In a lot of these cases, I'm using a pause for a specific length of time because there's nothing I can really look for to wait for to see that logic is ready for me to move to the next step. It's always my preference to choose some is such and such menu command available yet as a sign to me that logic is ready to move on. But in this case, I don't really have anything like that to watch for because I've basically just selected the name of a marker and then deselected it. So I put in a sort of, hard-coded pause there. And once again, we're saying, as long as we're not on the last alt version, go ahead and issue the bounce command. So it issues the shortcut key for bounce, pauses for a moment, and then it pauses until the bounce window is at the front. And in Logic Pro, when you bounce a project, the title bar of this window includes the word bounce. And so I look for that, to wait for that. If we're on the first alt, prompt me to set up the bounce options the way it's needed. So if the alternative's name is either full or full all caps, go ahead and do this. Otherwise, it's already been done and we don't need to do it. This action creates that window that came up for me to set the bounce parameter. So it looked like this. You remember that? Okay. And I just set everything the way I want to in the bounce window and then click OK. It waits for the OK button in that window to become enabled and then clicks it and pauses until we're back in the main bounce window, and it watches for that by looking for a button called bounce to be enabled. Slight pause. It types the name of the current alternative mix in the file name window of the save as window. So we've gotten to this point and it's pasting the name of the song that I gave it and the name of the current alt up here. That's this prepend to alt that I typed into the prompt window and the variable local alt name based on the marker name. All right. If we're still on the first alt, it also prompts me to choose the desired save location. And you saw that. That's basically, we're here. It gave me a chance to create this folder and then choose OK when I was done. And that window looked like that. Okay. Groovy. Again, in all these cases, OK just means ultimately to proceed with the macro, and the cancel means to abort the macro and the macro. Then it's ready to press the bounce button. I added a timed pause in here just as a safety to make absolutely sure we don't mess with anything while the track is bouncing. And then this is a smart pause saying all of the following have to be true. The front window of logic has to have the word tracks in the title bar, and any window cannot have the phrase Logic Pro in it. That's because the progress bar that you get, or the progress window that you get when you're bouncing, has the phrase Logic Pro in it. So we want that to have gone away. And pause, another hard-coded pause, deselect everything, use the keyboard shortcut twice to move to the next marker. So it advances 2 markers to get to the next alt versions. So the way that works is this would have been selected, I deselect it, and then I issue the command to move to the next marker and advance the cycle bar. I issue it twice, 1, 2. And there I am at the next marker, and the keyboard shortcut to select it and rename it allows me to copy it and move on to the next. So then it just keeps repeating that until we get to the marker named end, and then it knows that it's done and it stops running. So let's take a look at the results. In the desktop, I created a folder. There it is. And there they are, right? So we have the full mix and all of the alts that got bounced successfully to that folder. Cool. So I know that might have seemed a little bit complex as we walked through it, but there are a couple things to remember. One is that you only have to build the macro one time, and you might end up using it 1,000 times. Speaking as a composer for film and TV, thousands of times, right? So it adds up. The benefit really, really adds up. Secondly, I would say Keyboard Maestro is way easier to learn than shortcuts. Currently, anyway. Keyboard Maestro is the most powerful, most versatile, well-developed, and easy-to-learn automation tool there is for the Mac. If you make a living with your Mac, I urge you to consider plunking down the whole $36 to purchase it, because it's just remarkable what you can do with it. If you're interested in learning more about Keyboard Maestro, for one, just leave some comments on this video and I'm happy to answer your questions if I can. And if I don't know the answer, find it out for you. And check out my Skillshare classes. If you use the links in the description, you get a free month. And given that my classes are only about an hour, hour and a half long, I think that's going to work out for you. So check it out. Until next time, cheers.